15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets, of course, a powerhouse in the Western Conference, especially had a magical run, went all the way to the Western Conference Finals last year, knocking off some big teams, including the Clippers, and knocking off several other contenders. Here with me, of course, I am Earl Holland. Here with me to talk about the Nuggets and to talk about their season is Nuggets fan living in the East Coast, Tony Coliani. Thank you for being here on the podcast. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I really do appreciate it. Thank you and welcome to the show.
Earl, thanks for having me on. I'm always down to discuss playoff basketball and talk about the Nuggets.
The first thing I have to ask, especially being on the East Coast, what led to you becoming a Nuggets fan? I assume, were you originally from the area there, or did you just fall in love with them?
So I get that a lot. Everybody I talk to in the NBA, I get that a lot. I live in Philly. I'm not a Philly fan. I'm a Nuggets fan, so I get that a lot. So originally, I'm from Scranton. Scranton is like a big melting pot of sports teams. You have majority with Knicks fans. You have a lot with Sixers fans, Nets fans. Boston's not terribly far. DC's not terribly far. So I just loved basketball growing up. I didn't root for one team. I more so rooted for players and just rooted for good product. There was a player by the name of Jerry McNamara to come out of Scranton. He went to Syracuse. His first year at Syracuse, they won the national championship in 2003. Carmelo Anthony was on that team. Melo got drafted to the Nuggets. I followed him to Denver. And then from then on, got a Nuggets fan. Even though he got traded to New York, I stayed with the Nuggets, stayed with my loyalty of Denver.
And what is your most memorable Nuggets moment? I know there's been a few, especially that run last year in the playoffs were pretty big.
Yeah, you can't forget that run. I mean, yeah, it was in a bubble, but like what Murray did and what that team did as a whole is unbelievable. You can never forget that. But there's a few prior to last year that I'll never remember. That I'll never forget. Excuse me. First off, Melo getting drafted there. They started making their run. They progressively got better and better. Then they went all in, traded for Iverson, and I thought, okay, this could be it. They made a Western Conference final run then, and then did a full rebuild. And when they did the rebuild, they ended up with a guy by the name of Nikola Jokic in the second round. My most memorable moment as a Nuggets fan is probably his 40-point game at the Garden. Not many players get 40 points. Not many players get 40 points at the Mecca. And for him to get that in his second year in the league, being a second-round guy, nobody knew who he was. That's probably my favorite moment as a Nuggets fan.
What's the most unique piece of Nuggets-related memorabilia or clothing that you have?
So Earl, I have a bunch of jerseys throughout the years. I have Jokic, Kenneth Faried, Manuel Mudiay, Murray, Porter Jr. now. Kind of as guys passed on Mudiay and Faried. I'm not wearing those jerseys so much anymore. So my mom helped me out, and she made a few bandanas for my dog. So when playoff time comes around, when big games come around, my dog's wearing some Nuggets bandanas. So that's something that always makes me happy when I see.
Expectations going into the season after going to the conference finals, and I know falling to the Lakers in the bubble. What were you hoping that the Nuggets could do? Was taking the next step to going to the NBA finals part of your plans?
Obviously, yeah. Obviously, you want to see some growth of where you were last year. You never want to continue to do the same. You always want to chase that ring. But with this team being so young, a championship wasn't necessarily my goal. My goal was to progress the young guys, the young core, get them more experience, and grow them together. We have 3-4 more years of the core, and Murray, Jokic, and Porter Jr. all under their contracts. So I wanted them to get experience and just to compete.
Was there a point where you were thinking, okay, there's no doubt that they're getting to the playoffs. There's nothing going to stop the Nuggets from returning to the postseason?
Yes, I mean, we had a shaky start. I mean, it was 1-4. You go on the internet and people start freaking out, and they do that with every sport, really. They start freaking out. They're like 1-4. The Nuggets aren't the same as what they were last year. But when you look at it, it was a short break from the bubble. They didn't have a lot of time to regroup, and they had a lot of guys leaving and a lot of new guys coming in. So I knew that they would rebuild, get the guys some playing time, get more experience together, and rebound, and eventually make a playoff run.
Were there concerns where you were thinking that not only could these guys possibly miss the playoffs, but even fall into the dreaded 7-10 seeds where they would have to fight their way into the playoffs?
To be honest, yes. And only because of how deep the West is. Like, you can go from a 2-week span where the 3 and 4 team are switched, or the 1 and 2 team are switched, or the 5 team is now the 8 team. So I always did look at standings and make sure we're not close to the 7 or 8 seed. But at the same time, there was a little bit of concern, yes.
Looking at the playoff field, now that you guys are settled in, looking at all the matchups, who did you feel like the Nuggets matched up the best with in the conference? And do you feel like that you were able to get that matchup?
So I think, and this goes back to like the motto of what Coach Mike Malone has been teaching to the Nuggets since he's been there, is never be afraid of competition. So I don't think there's really anybody that they wanted to play or like look at it like, oh, that's an easy team, let's play them in the playoffs. It was more so don't back down to competition and kind of compete. But me individually, I was kind of looking at the last week of the playoffs and see how they were shaking out. I was looking at Dallas because I think historically the last 2-3 years of our core versus Luka and their core, we've played them pretty well, and they haven't had an answer for Jokic. So I think that would be a matchup that we could capitalize on.
Who's the team that, as a Nuggets fan, you were sort of concerned seeing in the playoffs and that could pose problems?
It's got to be the defending champion Lakers. It's got to be. I mean, LeBron has been last year played out of his mind with the help of Anthony Davis, who's also top 5 player in the NBA when healthy. I mean, they're an unbelievable team, and you saw it last year in the playoffs of the run that they made, and you're going to see it again this year when they get healthy and start rolling. They're a dominant force. So you never want to play them in the first round, and if you could hope to play them in the Western Conference Finals, that could be it. But it would be the Lakers.
Looking at the injury to Jamal Murray, how devastating as a fan did you feel that it played? How devastating was it to you as a fan? And do you feel like that really puts a blow to the Nuggets playoff and finals aspirations?
Not going to lie, early, it did suck. I mean, from what they did last year, you think they're going to just keep building off of that. And then they make the Aaron Gordon trade. Really rely on the defensive end, bring him in, help out offensively as well with some cutting to the basket and offensive rebounding. But that was a huge blow. And you could see that into the team and how it deflated all the air out of them after that. But they did rebound a little bit. They've been playing some good basketball since he's been hurt, but it was definitely a huge blow, especially how he's played in the bubble last year. I mean, you're not winning 3 series like that or 2 series like that if he's not getting those 50-point games. And that was just unbelievable. So it was definitely a huge blow.
I believe he's going to be traveling with the team as well this go around. I believe that
that's correct.
Do you feel like that'll give that psychological boost that while he may not be physically on the court, he will be there?
I think so. And so he got surgery in LA and he's been rehabbing in LA. And the Nuggets' first time as a team when they saw him after the injury was the Clippers game. And you saw how well the Nuggets did in that Clippers game about 2-3 weeks ago. They played very well. This was the first time when Paul George and Leonard were on the court and they were fully healthy. But Nuggets just answered. Nuggets had an answer for everything that the Clippers threw at them, and Nuggets played very well and won the game. And you can see it on the bench. Everybody on the bench from the 12th man to all 5 starters were excited the entire game. And Jamal was a leader of that.
Looking at the NBA Finals matchup, who do you have coming out of the Western Conference? Who do you have coming out of the Eastern Conference? Who wins the finals and how many games?
So the West, like I said earlier, the West is so deep. Like I could see a scenario in my head where there's a couple teams winning it. But just looking at the bracket, I like the Suns a lot. I think if the Suns can get by the Lakers in the first round matchup, I think the Suns could pull through. I also like the Jazz. I think if Mitchell can get back to what he was regular season, that team as a whole might be the best starting 5 in the West from 1 through 5. They're a great team. And they've shown it last year as well. They were a missed shot on the 3-point play to move into the second round. But they're a great team. I also like the Blazers. I think if not now for the Blazers, when? I mean, this is probably the deepest they've been with the addition of Norman Powell and Yusuf Nurkic back. They're also a very good team. But that being said, like I said earlier, you can't rule out the Lakers just yet. I have to see how LeBron and AD are in a playoff series, and if they're fully healthy, then Lakers will be my pick.
And who do you have coming out of the East?
Coming out of the East, even though I live here, I'm going to say Philly, and that's non-biased. I think what Joel Embiid has done, he's just been a dominant force in the basketball court, down low, hitting 3-point shots at a historic 3 percentage rate for a big man. Ben Simmons' defensive play has been phenomenal. If he doesn't win Defensive Player of the Year, he'll be second in the running. I think them as a team are probably the most dominant team in the Eastern Conference.
Coming and between Suns and Sixers, who do you have winning and how many games?
I'm going to say the Sixers in 7. The Sixers, when they win, it's never easy, and any Sixers fan will tell you that. It is never easy when they win, so I think it's going to go 7. And the Suns, I think it's going to be Chris Paul's time to make a run. Like Chris Paul's not going to retire without making the final or NBA championship finals. So I think it's going to be Suns, Sixers in 7.
One thing I wanted to throw in there, among the talks for MVP, Jokic and of course Embiid and Curry, who do you think comes out winning the MVP?
I think it's going to be Jokic. For him to play all 72 games this year and really have 0 dud games. I was looking at the stats earlier. His worst game was a loss in which he had 17 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. And any other play in the NBA, that's starting roster spot in any team in the NBA. And that's his worst game. He's been just so consistent. And what he did, even without the Jamal Murray injury, they've had the best record since March 1st in the NBA. I think it's just phenomenal, and it just speaks to how good of a player he is. I think he deserves the MVP.
Well, Tony, I really appreciate you being on. Before we wrap this up, wanted to know if you had any shout-outs to anybody or anything you wanted to promote since you have the opportunity.
I don't. If I could say one shout-out, it would be on my Instagram and Twitter coming next week. There's a memorial golf tournament called the Sunnyside Invitational taking place in Myrtle Beach, Carolina. If anyone wants to follow around on that, post some images of beautiful golf courses in Myrtle Beach. And on Twitter, I'll give a little review about the course as well if anyone loves golf. But that's really it, Earl.
How can people reach out to you, talk a little bit of Nuggets basketball?
You can reach me on Twitter at Tony the Tiger or on my Instagram at Tony Coliani. And I'll be happy to discuss Nuggets basketball any day of the week.
Definitely. And one thing I want to give a shout out to Hunter Greenwood. Thank you, Hunter, for connecting me with Tony, because, sometimes when you're in a bind, you never know who can find somebody for you. And I really appreciate it, Hunter. If you're watching, thank you. For everybody who's watching, this is the first of a few live streams. And next up will be the Washington Wizards and Kobe Price. And we'll be doing that one at around 7:30. So everybody who's been watching, continue to keep on watching. You can follow us, of course, on Twitch at the Sports Refuge, on Instagram at Sports Refuge Sports Blog, on of course on Facebook at the Sports Refuge, and on YouTube at the Sports Refuge as well. For everybody who's been watching, we'll wrap this up off air. Again, for Tony Coliani, I am Earl Holland. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys in about 45 minutes, maybe sooner.
It's Earl.